Hello, everyone. My name is Jane Clarke. I'm an Irish poet, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the Hay Festival Book Club for March. So, tonight we're celebrating Gillian Clarke's selected poems, which I have here in front of me. But before I say hello to Gillian, I'd like just to say a few things. One, the Hay Festival is a charity with year-round activities to connect audiences with artists, and thanks to everyone for their continued support. This selected poems by Gillian, this very beautiful book. It's beautiful inside. The poems are wonderful, and it also is really beautiful production by Picador. It is the Hay Festival Book Club pick for March, and copies are available for purchase on the Hay Festival website or obviously from your own local bookseller. And the festival itself, the book club, is supported by Unwin Charitable Trust, and you can watch past events free online. So I'd like to just tell you a little bit about Gillian. She was born in Cardiff. She's a poet, playwright, editor, translator, lecturer. And I know that she is very well known. Probably all of you listening to me tonight know her work really well. She was National Poet of Wales from 2008 to 2015. Her work has been translated into 10 languages, and it's been on the GCSE and A-level exam syllabus for over 30 years. And as you probably know, she's performed her poetry all over the country for poetry live events for student audiences, and also she's read many times abroad all over the world. She was awarded the Queen's Gold Medal for Poetry in 2010 and the Wilfred Owen Award in 2012. She's president of Tynoweth, the Wales Centre for Literature in North Wales, and which she co-founded. And it's there that I actually met her in 2008. And that was a very fortunate meeting for me because I went on to do many courses with her. And in fact, did my MPhil in writing in Glamorgan. And really, it was a wonderful course. But it was Gillian that I followed there, and she was my tutor there, for which I'm always grateful. So, and Gillian lives in the uplands in Ceredigion in Wales, and herself and David, her husband, raise a small flock of sheep and planted a native woodland. So, Gillian, I am delighted to be here with you this evening, and I've lots of questions, but I also want to hear you read some of your poems because I think the audience would love that. So I'm just going to ask you to get us started, Gillian, with Blincourt. It's the second poem in the book, and I think it sets the scene beautifully for our work tonight.
Thank you very much, Jane. That's lovely. Blincourt is the name of our little longhouse in Ceredigion. And people often say, where do you live? You know, where is it? They used to when I was to and fro from Cardiff, especially. Blincourt, you ask how it is. I will tell you. There is no glass. The air spins in the stone rectangle. We warm our hands with apple wood. Some of the smoke rises against the ploughed brown field as a sign to our neighbours in the 4 fields of the valley that we are in. Some of the smoke seeps through the stones into the barn, where it curls like fern on the walls. Holding a thick root, I press my bucket through the surface of the water, lift it, brimming, and skim the leaves away. Our fingers curl on enamel mugs of tea like ploughmen. The stones clear in the rain, giving their colours. It's not easy. There are no brochure blues or boiled sweet reds. All is ochre and earth and cloud green nettles tasting sour, and the smells of moist earth and sheep's wool. The wattle and daub chimney hood has decayed away, slowly creeping to dust, chalking the slate floor with stories. It has all the first necessities for a high standard of civilized living. Silence inside a circle of sound, water and fire, light on uncountable miles of mountain from a big, unpredictable sky. 2 rooms, waking and sleeping, 2 languages, 2 centuries of past to ponder on, and the basic need to work hard in order to survive. I should add that, of course, that's how it was in the old days.
Yeah.
When I bought this little place, this 2-roomed stone longhouse, it was as primitive as I'm describing here. But now it's a house that people can live in the modern age. As you can probably see,
As we can
we've got
see. Yeah.
doors to the garden. No
Yeah.
longer is it primitive,
Yes, but it's
right?
beautiful to hear about it, the heritage in a way in which you live, the history, because you're someone who is so interested in history. So that really sets us off very well. And Gillian, I'd like to ask you about bringing together this selected poems, the process. What was it like to select only 100 poems from your 9 collections? And was it difficult? Was it enjoyable? And were there poems you had to leave out that you regretted? So just could you tell us a bit about that?
It's really hard to remember because it's quite a while since I put the book together. But I suppose I put the book or put my collections in order and had a look and thought, what tells the story?
Yeah.
What will bring us factually and atmospherically and so on to the present day? So the poem Blancourt is quite early on in the book. It's not the first one, but it's pretty near the first. The first is The Sundial, and that's a very early poem. And Blancourt is second. And I suppose I've established in those 2 poems a child and a place, and then moving on from there.
Yes.
They are in the order in which they appear in their earlier books. I
Okay.
haven't changed the order. But it was, I forget if it was difficult. I don't suppose it was that difficult. I knew I had so many pages, probably, and got rid of the things I wasn't satisfied with,
Yeah.
ended up with a heap.
Yes. Yeah.
It's hard to remember exactly how I did it.
Yeah, well, no, that all of that is so interesting, and actually, it links. Is some of the people who are watching tonight sent in some questions, and one of them said, "Have you ever had any regrets about?" Fliss asked, "Had you any regrets about poems you didn't put in?"
I don't think so.
Good,
They
good.
exist, they
Yeah,
exist on paper somewhere, and
yeah,
I think, if it's a book, once it was accepted by Picador, they were happy. I can't remember if they wanted to get rid of or bring in any. I can't remember. I think they accepted what I had done, but it's historical order in order
yes.
in which the times they describe and the times in which they were written. No,
Yeah.
I have no regrets.
Okay, no, that's lovely. And because also I love the way you say it's about telling a story, and that is the sense one gets when we're reading it. I love that. Gillian, I wanted to move on to the whole question of music. Even as you read, it's wonderful to hear you read your work because it is so musical. But there are 2 poems particularly I'd like to hear you read, and then I'm going to ask you about the music. So could you read Bach at St. David's and My Box?
No. Bach at St. David's. Every so often there is a festival at the beautiful little town of St. David's in the southwest corner of Wales in Pembrokeshire. And there is it's the most remarkable cathedral. So this tiny town is a city because it has a cathedral. And that cathedral has many connections with Ireland, as South Pembrokeshire does. So the connection between all sorts of connections between our coast and your coast in Southern Ireland.
Yes.
And this was I was listening I went to the festival to hear Bach being sung by a lovely singer called Ellen Manhand Thomas. She's a beautiful, beautiful Welsh singer, and she was part of the performance in the cathedral that day. I'm just telling you what it was like.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. A beautiful cathedral. In spring, 15 centuries ago, the age of saints and stones and holy wells, a blackbird sang its oratorio in the fan-vaulted canopy of the trees. Before Bach, before walls, before bells, cantatas, choirs, cloisters, clear stories. The audience holds its breath when the soprano, like a bird in the forest long ago, sings the great cathedral into being. And apse to nave, it calls back, echoing, till orchestra and choir in harmony break on the stones like the sea. And listen, out there at the edge of spring among the trees, a blackbird answering.
Oh, gorgeous. Beautiful. Thank you, Gillian. And then another very musical poem, please. My Box.
It's probably the only cathedral which is really close to the sea in the British Isles, I think.
Yes, yes.
My box. It's a real box, but it's a symbolic box as well. I keep my journals in it. I got a journal to hand. My journals are little dollar notebooks, black dollar notebooks, and I keep them in this particular box. My box is made of golden oak, my lover's gift to me. He fitted hinges and a lock of brass and a bright key. He made it out of winter nights, sanded and oiled and planed, engraved inside the heavy lid in brass, a golden tree. In my box are 12 black books, where I have written down how we have sanded, oiled and planed, planted a garden, built a wall, seen jays and goldcrests, rare red kites, found the wild heart's ease, drilled a well, harvested apples and words and days, and planted a golden tree. On an open shelf, I keep my box. Its key is in the lock. I leave it there for you to read, or them, when we are dead. How everything is slowly made, how slowly things made me. A tree, a lover, words, a box, books, and a golden tree.
Thank you so much, Gillian. I really wanted the audience to hear both those poems, to hear the music in both of those. So beautiful. And so that brings me to the question. I remember when you were my tutor, I was bringing you poems every 6 weeks or every 2 months over a period of 2 years. And I was so fortunate to have that time with you. But you really emphasize the music. You're always saying to me, Jane, where's the music in the lines? Find the music. So I'd like you just to say, what is it about the music in poetry for you?
Well, poetry is word music. And
Right.
that doesn't mean to say de-dum or even rhyme.
Mm.
But there is, I think one has to find it by much listening, reading, and so on. I don't think there's a definition. I
Yeah.
mean, for instance, it's easy enough to explain the sonnet with its
Yeah.
14 lines and its iambic pentameter in every line. That is explainable.
Yes.
But for a poem to be musical, I think it has to be written down according to the ear of the writer. And I think the only way one can learn how to do that is by reading a great deal of poetry
Yeah.
aloud, and finding the word music. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes you hear people say it. You're just walking along the road and you pass a group of people and somebody says something completely beautifully wonderful that you never forget.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that instead of, I mean, nursery rhymes of when you're a little child, nothing is more important to the language of poetry that is to come, than nursery rhymes. They're wonderful. And they have tunes, but they don't have to have tunes. The words themselves are the tunes of. So I think when you're very little, and I did hear a lot of nursery, my mother did
Yeah.
sing me nursery rhymes when I was little, and playground games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I caught a fish alive, or poor Mary is a weeping, a weeping, a weeping. Poor Mary is a weeping on a fine summer's day. Those are the seeds of poetry, and they will teach you to love it or even to write it.
Yeah.
But without music, poetry is not poetry.
Lovely, lovely. And Gillian, I mean, I love all that you've said there, and that I think that would be very helpful for people who are listening in the audience, either as writers of poetry, but also as readers. And I'm really struck by you saying it's important to read poetry aloud for yourself, whether you're a
Yes.
writer or a reader. And I think that's really important. And I don't think everybody realizes that. And even myself, I forget that because often I read quietly, but actually to slow down and read it aloud, that's very important. Lovely, lovely to hear that.
And sometimes you can hear it aloud silently. Sometimes I lie in bed and I can't sleep,
Yeah.
and I'm I'm singing it in my head, but
Yeah.
it's not out loud, And David would not be pleased if I'm making a loud noise. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's still you can do things aloud in silence,
Yes, beautiful.
can't you?
Yes, you
You
can.
can
That's
think,
beautiful.
you
Beautiful.
can think music in silence. Yes.
Yes, lovely. Okay, so then, Gillian, I wanted to move on. You mentioned sonnets, so I do want to move on to that. So, can I ask you to read there are many beautiful sonnets in this book, but I'd like you to read two of them, a sonnet for Nye and Blue Hydrangeas.
Right. Nye is an Erin Bevan. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful um, man who was a great Labour politician with a coal mining background. Of course, I come from South Wales, and although I was brought up in Cardiff, I mean, my husband is the son of a coal miner, and the miners were very cultured.
Yeah.
There were miner choirs, um, and debating societies, and they were a very special group of people in South Wales in particular. And so I suppose Aneurin Bevan came from that. Nye he was known of to for short.
Okay.
Um, and as he was a Labour politician, he caused great trouble to the Tories. I'll make no further comment on that. For now. London was used to trouble from the valleys. People who lived close loved song and word, despised the big men's promises and lies. With them, the socialist vision struck a chord. Colliers who hated class and privilege, whose work was filthy, dark, and perilous, spared a portion of their paltry wage to pay a stricken neighbour's doctor's bills. They sent their man to Parliament. Who dares wins, a fierce man with a silver tongue. The hammered, stammered words in the hallowed air of the house, an Olympian among them, stuttering his preposterous social dream, translated from a little local scheme.
Fantastic.
The little local scheme, by the way,
Yeah.
was that before there was a health service, the miners put pennies into a collection to pay for the doctor to look after anyone who was ill or injured.
Yes.
So that's a little local scheme.
Yes.
And then it turned into the health service.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's lovely link there, Gillian. And then, Gillian, I'm going to ask you to read Blue Hydrangeas, which, if I had to choose one poem in your selected poems, I think this is my favorite of all. So it'd be lovely to hear you read it. The Blue Hydrangeas, yeah.
My mother was crazy about blue hydrangeas. They don't grow everywhere. Quite a lot of England can't grow them because they need acid soil, but they grow very well in all the bits of Wales where I've ever lived, including where we live now. Blue hydrangeas. You bring them in, a trug of thundercloud, neglected in long grass and the sulk of a wet summer. Now a weight of wet silk in my arms, like her blue dress, a load of night inks shaken from their hair, her hair aflame, a shadow against light. As long ago she leaned to kiss goodnight, when downstairs was a bright elsewhere, like the lost bush of blue hydrangeas. You found them, lovely, silky, dangerous, their lapis lazuli, their indigos tide-marked and freckled with the rose of death, beautiful in decline. I touch my mother's skin, touch mine.
Oh, thank you so much, Gillian.
It sort of is explained as we go along, but I suppose
Yeah.
I thought, should have said at the beginning that it's my mother's favourite flower and blue was her favourite colour. She was a very beautiful and rather silly woman with a very sensible daughter who was stern with her. And she had auburn curls and beautiful skin and inky blue eyes. So, and she loved the hydrangeas.
That's gorgeous. And Gillian, just to say, we have the blue hydrangeas here as well, because we're on acid soil over here in Wicklow as well. But so I wanted to talk to you about the two languages, English and Welsh. And I know that you have, kind of a complex relationship with Welsh because of your mother and all of that. But I
Yes.
suppose because I also grew up with two languages, Irish and English. I've always been interested in hearing you speak about this. So, but before I ask you a question, would you read two of those poems that deal with this? The first one being Not, please.
Not. Yes. Yes, my mother was one of the youngest of 10 children of a North Wales farmer where Welsh was spoken every day. And so she She left home and went to Manchester to become a nurse, and she pretended not to be Welsh. So she just refused to speak Welsh. So then when my father was passionate for the language, but she wouldn't let me speak Welsh. She wouldn't speak Welsh to me at home. And of course, nothing is more provocative than one's mother not wanting and Welsh is very much one of our languages here, and David has learnt it as well, and he's more fluent than I am. And anyway, my mother thought I was a bit crazy, and she wasn't pleased. Not. My mother, child of a tenant farm, learned her place from the landlord's man. His word, Welsh, snapped, cutting, curt, a word that called her stranger. So my mother would not say the word, but spat it out like a curse, a bitterness to be rid of, to be scoured from her mouth. My mother's word didn't sound like the name for a people, for us, for belonging, for a language older than legend, or like 9 on the farm, tucking me in with a prayer and a Nos da, cariad. That's good night, darling. Nos da, cariad. Or calling the hens in the morning, her voice all cluck and chuckle like scattering corn. Or my father passing the time with stories as we drove to the sea, teaching me words, the goo and woo of wind and water, the esh, esh, esh of waves on the shore.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Again, your emphasis on the sound, Gillian. And Gillian, can you read the second poem there? I won't even try to pronounce it, but I know in English it's for better or for worse. So can you read that one, please?
Where's gwaith? Gwaith is for the better, gwaith, the worst. It's not difficult. And it begins in Welsh too. It's about a ring. Orfodre hon idd briadov. Something about the ring in the blackbird's eye on an April evening. The raptor's jeweled stare. The marriage of sun and rain on dancing water. The circle of my arms round sheets off the line. Yours, bringing armfuls of wood for the fire. Am corff ith am rhededaf. Something of touch, taste, tongue, the language of hands, those chemical gifts one to the other, grace and gesture, silence, reflection, the pair for life, 2 swans on a river, soundlessly sculling the stream, lover to lover. Am holl olidbadol ith gynnisgaiddaf. My dowry, a derelict house on a hill, 5 fields, 2 acres of bluebells under oaks. Yours, a vision. You made sound the ruin, dream space and light. A room of oak and glass, let in the sky, the hills, and all of Ceredigion cariad in a glance.
Wonderful.
The hue is dark, of course. And
Yeah.
in fact, before it grew dark, you could probably see the oak and the glass and all of Ceredigion behind me in this
Wonderful.
room.
Wonderful. A wonderful poem to read.
Added on to the little 2-roomed old longhouse.
Lovely. That's lovely. And so, Gillian, can I ask you then, how do you think having 2 languages influenced you as a poet? do you think the fact that you knew two languages growing up, or in different ways, I know, but do you think that they influenced your writing?
Um, English was the language spoken at home because my mother decided
Yes.
that was the way to get on. She thought it was the language that I had to speak. So Welsh was not spoken at home. I heard Welsh when I was with my father, or
Mm.
when he took me visiting to country relatives and so on. I heard Welsh then. Um, but I went, I was good at English in school.
Mm.
And so English was a very strong language for me because, you know, I used to get a good mark on my essay every week, my weekly essay. My excellent Irish English teacher called Miss Tierney,
Right.
um, it was she who took me into her room one day when I had written a short story, and she looked at it and marked it. And she took me to her room and she said, I think I was in the lower sixth. I think you could be a writer.
Ah,
So that was hugely enabling. She was a wonderful teacher, a
yeah,
wonderful English teacher who gave me. So, of course, I was good at English.
yeah,
So I could never have been a writer in Welsh
yeah,
because of the story of my family,
yeah,
because of these things.
yeah.
So English became very important. Also, Auntie Phyllis took me to see a Shakespeare play every year in Stratford-on-Avon from when I was 10,
Right.
10 years old.
Mm.
I was sitting in the one of the front rows in Stratford-on-Avon and King Lear. It was an amazingly powerful influence
Yeah.
on the language that I would write in, I
Yes.
must admit.
Wonderful.
But
Yeah.
I think Welsh is a beautiful, wonderful language, and I love it all around us here. And
Mm.
I mean, David in particular speaks it to, all our Welsh-speaking neighbours. The two languages are very important to me
Yeah.
in different ways.
In different
But
ways.
my material for creating has
Yeah.
to be English
Yeah.
because of my story.
Yeah. Lovely. Lovely. That's really, really interesting. Thank you, Gillian. Um, I'm going to move us on to another strong theme in your selected poems is your interest in politics, your interest in justice, equality. You write quite a few poems of witness, is how I would, express them. And so I wanted to ask you about that. But first, could you read two of those poems? One being Six Bells, and then the other one, A Difficult Birth, Easter 1998. So could you read Six Bells, Gillian, please?
Thank you. It's a lovely thing to ask me to do. It was a terrible, terrible accident. Um, um, at the time when it happened, it was it's the last really bad, serious accident that I can remember happening in the coal mining. I was living in Cardiff in South Wales at the time, and I heard about this. And it's such a beautiful name, Six Bells, and
Mm.
there's such a terrible story. So this is for the 44 miners killed in the explosion on the 28th of June, 1960. It's a long time ago, and but I still remember it. Perhaps Six Bells, the name of the colliery, Six Bells.
Mm.
Perhaps a woman hanging out the wash paused, hearing something, a sudden hush, a pulse inside the earth, like a blow to the heart, holding in her arms the wet weight of her wedding sheets, his shirts. Perhaps heads lifted from the work of scrubbing steps, hands stilled from ringing rainbows onto slate, while below the town, deep in the pit, a rockfall struck a spark from steel and fired the void, punched through the mine, a fist of blazing fire damp. As they died, perhaps a silence before sirens cried, before the people gathered in the streets, before she'd finished hanging up her sheets.
That's so beautiful, Gillian. Very moving. Very, very moving. And then, yes, I've asked you to read A Difficult Birth, Easter 1998. Could you read that one as well, please? Thanks, Gillian.
Yes. We had at the time a little flock of sheep. And one evening, I thought I ought to go out and have a look to see if she was okay, because there was all the lambs were born except one ewe who had never had lamb before, and we brought her into the shed, and I thought I ought to go out to see her. And the date was Easter 1998, which, as an Irish person, you will probably know as historically extremely important moment for Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, and the Troubles.
Yes.
And
yes.
you know, the way it was all going to change, we hoped, and it did eventually.
Yes.
A Difficult Birth, Easter 1998. An old ewe, but somehow, till this year, had given the ram the slip. We thought her barren. Good Friday and the Irish peace deal close. And tonight she's serious, restless, and hoofing the straw. We put off the quiet supper and bottle of wine we'd planned to celebrate if the news is good. Her waters broke an hour ago, and she sipped her own lost salty ocean from the ground. While they slog it out in Belfast, 8 decades since Easter 1916, exhausted, tamed by pain, she licks my fingers with a burning tongue, lies down again. 2 hooves and a muzzle, but the lamb won't come. You phone for help and step into the lane to watch for car lights. This is when the white coats come to the women, well-meaning, knowing best, with their needles and forceps. So I ease my fingers in, take the slippery head in my right hand, 2 hooves in my left. We strain together, harder than we dared. I feel a creak in the limbs and pull till he comes in a syrupy flood. She drinks him famished, and you find us peaceful at a cradling that might have been a death. Then the second lamb slips through her opened door, the stone rolled away.
Oh, wonderful, Gillian. Just wonderful. And it's interesting for me, it reminds me of Yeats, Easter 1916.
Oh, he's one of my great favorites. But the stone rolling away, of course, is also the stone. It's also a religious image.
Yes.
The stone, yes.
Yes.
And Jesus, yes. Yeah.
And that's very important for the context as well. And, the Belfast Agreement and, that sense you built of the struggle it took for this peace to be birthed, this agreement to be birthed. You've done that so well in the image of the sheep, the ewe and the lamb. And, why I asked you to read it, of course, as an Irish woman, I'm very interested in it, but also because I think it really shows how you come at political poetry slant, like Dickinson would say, tell it slant. So I just wanted to ask you, what would your advice be to poets who want to write out of their political concerns and yet don't want to write polemic or rant? Have you any words of advice for what you do? You do it, it's both powerful and subtle, I think, the way you do the political poems. Would
I'm very pleased to hear you say that. A wonderful thing happened to me. Was it a couple of years ago, when the Irish peace agreement was it the 25 years?
Yeah.
I was the only non-Irish person invited to read in Dublin in
In
the
the
Abbey
Abbey.
Theatre
Yes.
at an
Yes.
event. And I was just so proud to be there. But also, I thought Ireland and Wales, the
Yes.
Patrick David and the crossing of the water feel very close, really, um,
Absolutely. Yes.
to that culture and to that history.
Yes.
So I felt very good. So, I was very proud to read that poem at that event. Indeed, I was.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, when you and I were working together, I always felt that link, the Welsh-Irish link. And also
Yes, yes.
you knew your Irish poets so well. I mean, obviously you love Heaney and Longley and, all of the Irish poets. So that link is there. But I suppose also because I think, what you feel in this poem is your real concern for what was happening, and you feel your support for what was happening, and that really matters. But I'm going to move us along because I've only got one more question before I have to open up to the other questions that other people have sent in. So I think I will ask you to read one of what the other theme that I wanted to ask you about is your interest in the natural world.
Yeah.
That's been an influence in your poetry all along. And I've heard you speak of your poems, your more recent work, as poems as love songs to the planet. So I was going to ask you to read two of those poems, Dawn and Polar, if you wouldn't mind reading those poems, which are very much, I suppose you could put them in the realm of eco poetry.
Okay.
So thank you, Gillian.
Dawn, right.
Yes.
A dark swish of starlings, like curtains parting in a hushed auditorium, and the show begins. A bowl of fire and a beech tree, then earth and sky suffused in flame. This could be the first dawn, the world brand new, just out of its wrapper. Sky a great window, open a moment only in the east, giving a glimpse of the myth before the first footprint, before the fall.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Gillian. I actually should have been telling people the page numbers as we go so they could have been looking as you read. But the next one is on the very next page, Polar, if you could read that one, Gillian.
I was a little when I was a little child, I loved polar bears. Partly because, and this is dreadful, I think, on the floor of the living room in our sitting room when I was a little child, there was a polar bear skin. Now, I think my mother had found it in a junk shop or something, but I used to be put down for my nap on the book with my head next to the polar bear. And I didn't know then about the cruelty that had been involved in shooting the bear. Beautiful creatures, beautiful creatures. Polar. Yes, you see, this is the memory of that is in this poem. Snowlight and sunlight, the lake glacial, too bright to open my eyes in the dazzling days of a distant January afternoon. It's long ago, and the house naps in the plush silence of a house asleep, like absence. I'm dreaming on the white bear's shoulder, paddling the slow hours, my fingers in his fur. His eyes are glass, each hair a needle of light. He's pegged by his claws to the floor like a shirt on the line. He is a soul. He is what death is. He is transparency, a loosening flow on the sea. But I want him alive. I want him fierce, with belly and breath and growl and beating heart. I want him dangerous. I want to follow him over the snows, between the immaculate earth and now, between the silence and the shot that rang over the ice at the top of the globe, when the map of the earth was something we knew by heart, and they had not shot the bear, had not loosed the ice, had not, had not.
Oh,
It's
thank
now as then, of course. You
Yes,
know, we're
ab-
wrecking the planet.
yes,
We killed the bear.
yes.
Yeah.
And,
It's a memory of a real bear skin, but
mm,
all the other.
yes, yes. And Gillian, that's what had led me to that question. You know, do you think the poet has a role at this time of environmental crisis?
Well, I certainly feel I have, but
Yeah.
that would be we each writer must be true to themselves and
Yes,
true to what they believe. But I'd find it hard to believe that there's anybody writing poetry these days who
yes,
wouldn't care about all of this. I mean,
yes,
most of the poets you can think of who are writing do refer at least to these things
yes,
that are being destroyed.
yes,
I do think that we must speak. If we
yes,
think it, we must speak it. If we
yes,
believe it, we must see it.
yes.
Certainly. And poets are doing it.
Yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Gillian. Gillian, I'm going to move to some of the questions from the audience because the audience sent in some wonderful questions and some of them are totally aligned with what I wanted to ask you anyway. And so three writers wanted to know, what do you enjoy reading, and who, after people read this book, where would you recommend they go next? So a few people wanted to know that.
Well, I love Yeats, of course. I love R.S. Thomas,
Yes,
poetry of R.S. Thomas, all the Thomases, Edward Thomas, R.S. Thomas, Dylan Thomas, um, and the Irish poet Evan Boland, his
yeah,
poetry I like a great deal. Um, on my desk at the moment, I think what I've got is what have I got here? Uh, um, and I think what I've got is Yeats under my hand at the moment. I mean, it's hard for me to suggest living poets who are writing now because there are so many of them, and many of them are good. And I don't want to single out
yeah,
poets
yeah,
that and leave others out. But that of the ones who are not with us anymore, like lovely Michael Longley, we lost very
yes,
recently.
absolutely.
Lovely Michael Longley,
Yes.
and Seamus and all of those people are very important to me.
Yes, lovely, lovely. Thank you, Gillian. And interesting to hear about Evan Boland. I don't know if you know, we've just named a library in Trinity College, Dublin, the Evan Boland Library, which is wonderful, a wonderful honor for her and for poetry. But another question, two questions together, really. You've received so many honors for your work in Wales and around the world. Which award means most to you? And then the second question was, what was it like being Wales' national poet, and how did that experience influence your work? So I think those two
Okay.
questions are linked.
Well, honors, I don't know. it's always very nice when somebody decides to give you an honor. So I can't say I've got a favorite because if it's always an amazing surprise. I mean, what I like best of all is doing a reading and having someone come up and say, I like your poem, or I like your poems. Will you sign my book? I mean,
Yeah.
a person rather than um, I am grateful for the honours. I'm grateful for the
Yeah.
gold medal. It's beautiful. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Every now and again, I get out of its very secret hiding place and take a look at it, and others as well. I'm
Yeah.
very pleased. It's very honoured to have them.
Yeah.
Um, but the most important thing is the response of a reader,
Yeah.
because I'm speaking, like, you're a poet. I'm speaking to you through the poem. You speak to me through your poems. That's how it is. And
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
the most important thing to me.
Yeah. That's
Um,
lovely.
don't
Lovely.
be shy coming up and say, sign my book.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. That is what's really
Oh,
important. Really important. And then that question about when you were, I knew you when you were National Poet of Wales.
oh
What
yeah.
that like? Because there was a lot of demands on your time, and there were a lot of commissions and a lot of requests. How did you find that, and how did it influence your writing, do you think?
It was very nice because because people had an excuse to invite me who might not have done so. And so I met that group of people. I went to that university or that school, that group. And obviously, nothing is more pleased, apart from writing the poems and hoping they're okay. It is poetry is a spoken thing too.
Yes.
So during that year, I went to all sorts of good places, met some lovely people who wanted to hear what I was up to.
Mm.
And I can't say there was anything special. It was all good. I was driving a lot then. I don't drive now. But I was driving, so I was in the car all the time heading off. And Wales is not a big country, but it's got windy roads and mountains. So I was very often a long way from
Yes.
home talking to
Yes.
people. And that was
Yeah, your answer doesn't surprise me at all, Gillian, because I think you are a wonderful communicator, and I think you really love people and you love connecting with them. And
I love them.
you know,
Yeah, I love
yeah,
them.
so yes. So then this question I want to put to you from one of the listeners tonight, and I think it might be a hard one for you to answer, but I'm going to ask you, why do you think your poetry continues to resonate so much with readers?
Does it?
I know modesty
I
forbids,
suppose we're
but
both alive at the same time, and I'm writing now. I'm
yeah,
not. I. It isn't written a long time ago in another time. It's
yeah,
written um, during the years I've been writing,
yes,
and I suppose we belong to the same world.
yes,
Problems,
yes, yeah,
wars,
yes,
um, plus the eternal things like love and children and so on.
yes.
Um, no, I don't know. I couldn't tell you really. I think I probably don't make anything very complicated. I don't hide what I'm trying to. Yeah, this is it. I think I
Yes,
try to say things that can be understood by s teenagers as
yes,
well as. I
yes,
mean, you don't have to be an academic to understand what I'm
yes,
writing.
yes,
It's it's straightforward speech, I
yes,
think.
yes, 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 and I would agree exactly with what you're saying. And I think again, the music in your work, and then
Oh,
the emotion. Your work is very emotional in this very restrained way, and I think that people are moved by that and touched, and that's why they want to go back. Um, One person has asked, and we're coming up near to time, so I think this is maybe a good question to finish with. One person has asked both of us to give our top writing tips. So I thought, Gillian, if you gave a few, and then I'll give a few. So what would
I,
your writing tips be?
um, silence. You can't
Okay.
write with the radio on.
Yes.
Um, read.
Yes.
I've probably got a book of poems by someone else on my desk, as well as a nice clean notebook and a pen,
Yes.
and no noise to distract me. And I'll read because I find that very inspiring. It excites me. It makes me think. Poetry is thrilling. So I'll read, it could be Keats, it could be Gerard Manley Hopkins, it could be um, Ted Hughes, Seamus Heaney, my favourites.
Yes.
Um, and um, and then maybe I'll pause, and
Yeah.
maybe an idea will come, maybe words will come, not their words, but excited
Mm.
by their creative effort, I suppose. It's read and give yourself some silence and peace, I
Yes.
think.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you, Jane. That's really good. And because they've asked both of us to give some tips, I would add to what you said. I think one of the things is not to expect it to be right when you start. For me, anyway, to kind of give myself the freedom to write anything at all in the beginning, to trust that I can make it in the editing. It's the
Yeah.
editing that makes it into the poem. But what matters first is just to let yourself write and write as freely as possible, and then trust that you can make a poem. Now you can't make a poem out of anything, out of everything, but there's something about just letting yourself, as you say, when you get that stimulation in your mind, letting yourself go for it, even though it might start like rubbish, but just let yourself go for it.
Yeah,
That's
I have a lot of scribble and
yeah,
crossings out, and
yes,
then I turn the page and write out the better bits, and then
yeah,
turn the page. I use 4 or 5 pages of a notebook before and maybe one phrase will last all the way through. One
yes,
phrase, or
beautiful.
maybe a line.
Beautiful, beautiful. Gillian, I think we have time for one last poem, and then I'll come in after you. If you would read one last poem, and then I'll say a few words at the end. And so I wanted, Gillian, if you would read the final poem in this book, which is very beautiful. And actually, I see that it has been set to music. And you can hear it on YouTube actually, this set to music. But
Oh,
the year's midnight, if you'd read it, Gillian.
a year's midnight. The flown, the fallen, the golden ones, the deciduous dead, all gone to ground, to dust, to sand, borne on the shoulders of the wind. Listen, they are whispering now while the world talks, and the ice melts, and the seas rise. Look at the trees. Every leaf scar is a bud, expecting a future. The earth speaks in parables, the burning bush, the rainbow, promises, promises.
Ah, thank you, Gillian. Gillian, I mean, what a beautiful poem to finish with, the last poem in the book. It's been a privilege and a joy to do this with you this evening, Gillian. Really has. And thank you for your generosity as ever. I know you answer all these student emails over many, many years. You're very generous in speaking about your work.
Thank you for all your work. You've done a lot of work to make me welcome and to read all the poems. Thank you so much, Jane. It's been really, really lovely
You're you're
to
you're very
read
welcome.
that.
And I hope lots of people go back to your book now, buy copies of it, giving them as presents to other people. So just the last thing I want to say then is that the Hay Festival Book Club will be back next month with Looking at Women, Looking at War by Victoria Amelina. And then you can sign up to the festival's newsletter to be the first to hear about it. And then the Hay Festival 2025 programme is out now. So thank you to all our participants here tonight with us tonight. Thanks for your questions, and particularly again, thanks to Gillian for the joy of this book club meeting with her. And so good night, everybody. Bye-bye.